Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zest with me, Shel Marie, the podcast that will take you on a journey from the hustle to the harmony, fueling your passion whilst finding your peace. Today, it's an absolute honor to welcome the beautiful Marina, a guest whose life spans both the seen and the unseen, from decades pioneering in technology to profound explorations of the soul, spirit, and human purpose. Her perspective is truly one of a kind. Her path, marked by a near-death experience, vision, and awakening, is more than just a story. It is an invitation to expand not just our knowledge, but our awareness. And today she shares her unique inner wisdom through the teachings that she offers on Prana Link, and now as an incredible guest on this podcast, guiding others to explore the light within themselves and step fully into their authentic power. Welcome, 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 Marina. How are you?
Thank you, Shel Marie. I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well. Oh my gosh, I narrowed down your bio so much. Not because I didn't want to share it all, but I just think you've got such an incredible journey. And yeah, even in the way I said it, I don't even think it even summarizes hardly anything that you've encountered, experienced, So first of all, and obviously anything that you want to share is completely guided by you and up to you. But as something that I've discovered previously and found a lot of interesting, insightful things about. I guess it's something, even though we have to remember that it's your life, not a story, it's your life and your journey. Having a near-death experience, obviously, like that must have just completely changed all your outlooks on life, in probably so many really beautiful ways and also so many other ways. So if you would like to share a little bit about, not necessarily it has to be that, but like what shaped you following that?
So the near-death experience did a couple of things. It made me no longer be afraid of death because it felt like the most wonderful moment to cross over.
Wow.
Secondly, it as I came back, it really slowed me down. It took me out of the corporate ambition ladder into a more inner journey. And it also gave me a mandate that I was being pushed to go back in order to teach, which was nowhere in my list of things to do. And I was told I knew too much and I needed to balance that out and come back and teach. And I felt I knew nothing. I felt I was at a total loss spiritually. What was I going back to teach? So I spent a lot of years reading Rudolf Steiner and trying to understand his train of thought. And he is very much like an impressionist painter in his writing and speeches. He touches on things and triggers your thinking to be different, but he doesn't explicitly pull it all together. And I felt that in order to understand what he said, I had to pull it all together. And so I began documenting what I understood from the different bits and pieces I read into some cohesive sequence. Otherwise, I was getting totally lost because he goes so far out in time, not only back in our Earth's history, but before the planet Earth. And it was just so massive to understand. I had to begin pulling it together. And then, like 13 years later, I had a very different experience. I was walking my dog in the hills outside Basel in Switzerland, and suddenly I felt this whirlwind take me over, and it kind of stayed with me for like 3 days. It was like Thursday, and it went into Friday and Saturday and bits of Sunday. And I felt like a sleeve turned inside out.
Wow.
And I out of that experience, I lost my ability to use my left brain. And I was in IT, right? I needed that. But everything, I was told that I was taken to how the ancients thought. And everything, all my thinking was right brain mode. I began to interpret symbols suddenly, like everything I saw, between what I saw and what I pulled in, there was a symbol. And it was not, it was mostly shapes, like flower shapes and how many petals are there, and that kind of symbolism.
Wow.
And then I began going inside, and I could see these light spheres inside me. And I began drawing that out, and my friends told me, oh, this looks like the Kabbalah. I had no idea what the Kabbalah was, and I tried to buy a book and read about it, but it felt so left brain with my inability to
Wow.
hook into sequential thinking. I just could not do it. So I decided, okay, I'll just explore this. And I explored it for 2 years, and I wrote down what I saw. And then when at the end of 2 years, I was given the choice, either you stay in this mode or you come out and write about it. And obviously, I chose to come out and write about it because that was my
Yeah.
mandate from an earlier experience. So, but along with the light spheres that I saw, I felt the harmonics of the earth, and different places of the earth would vibrate to different spheres.
Wow.
And so I began exploring that, and I began aligning those spheres to what I knew about, which was the seven chakras, right?
Mm.
So, for example, when you cross a river, the fourth chakra vibrates. And one bank of the river is on the third chakra vibration, and the opposite bank is on the fifth chakra vibration. So I began writing all of that down and trying to understand, what of it is constant and
Wow.
what of it, just depends on the contour of the locale you're at. And I realized that all the ancient temples were built in vibrational places.
Mm.
And that was very strongly felt in Switzerland or in Greece, which is mountainous.
Wow.
But then I moved back to Texas, which is very flat, and you don't feel a lot of vibration in a flat land, right? So the other thing that happened is I was a total empath. I would see somebody and I knew exactly what they were suffering from. And anyways, it's a lot of the things happen to a lot of the people who
Mm.
have alternate state experiences. But I decided to start writing about it. And as I began to write about it, I was slowly realizing how different it was than what you pick up and read about when you read about metaphysics or the other side. And that perplexed me. So for many years, like probably 20 years or so, I would just write down my experiences and try to organize that in a way that could be read by a third person. And then I thought, okay, let me go back out and see what the language is in the field.
Mm.
And when I did that, I realized that a lot of my learning comes because I hear something and something in me says not true. right? And then I explore that deeper and deeper till I understand how I differ from the position of the person giving the message. And after a long, long, long time, I realized that I was exploring an etheric inner field, whereas most of the metaphysics being talked about by healers and empaths is the outer field, which is astral. I was not having an astral experience at all. Actually, whenever somebody would try to take me through a guided meditation, I couldn't follow it. I would totally just could not follow it. And for a long time, I thought, why is that? And it's because I was on a different path. I was on an inner path, totally within me. And that was the astral is more of an outer path. And then I saw in Rudolf Steiner descriptions of how initiation could be inner or outer. And long story short, I finally came back to studying the Kabbalah and understanding how what I saw compared to the Kabbalah. And that was very interesting. The next thing I did was study the Beatitudes and see if they map to the Kabbalah Sephiroth and how they map. And that is a book I want to write because have you ever read Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. My journey started out as I was a child in Greece. And Greece is an Orthodox nation, but I was raised Catholic. And I was always wondering, why is there a different date for Christmas? Why is there a different way of crossing yourself? You know, and I was just preoccupied with these questions. And in the end, they made me doubt the dogma of the church and pull away and do all of these other search worldwide. But then in the end, I'm coming back to an interpretation of the Greek Gospels using the Greek language and realization of how much of that has been translated in a way that fits the dogma of the church rather than the teaching of Christ. And so it's like Coelho's shepherd. He starts in this church in Andalusia, goes to Egypt, has all of these adventures, only to be told that the treasure he's looking for is really under that church in Andalusia, right? So I'm returning back to the Gospels and the teaching of Christ and talking how it fits with what I saw inside me.
Wow. Oh my God.
So
there's so much there, like, wow, I don't even know where to start, but like what I just call it intuition, whatever, but I just like really feel is it's that about before their time again. Like I feel like yeah, I don't know, I just listening to your story, it's like no one's right or no one's not right or wrong because we all only know at the capacity we know. But it's like I hear like, but why can't other people see this, you know? Like I just think like what a blessing that you're experiencing right now, and yeah, like I can hear you, and like I think it's fascinating, but like what you're expressing, it's like trying to get out of the mind and just feeling to it, and I think it's incredible. And I'm really definitely excited for your books and to hear more about this. I think it's incredible. And you for me, you explained it so beautifully, something that is actually quite complex, but I feel like you've explained it in such a whether it's the left or the right brain, in a way that for me particularly it's very visual how you explained it. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that.
And that was the hardest thing to do, was find a vocabulary with which to talk about everything I was experiencing. And still today I go, oh, that's a good way of saying it, right? I mean, because it's not in our everyday small talk at all.
But I think you're doing a great job, because yeah, like for particularly me, and I'm sure most people not that are listening, for something that we haven't heard about at all, and for you to explain it in a way that, I am not just sitting here smiling like that. That's not the purpose of this. I'm actually genuinely having an understanding of what you mean, because of the way you're explaining it. And I think that that's incredible.
So I can tell you a specific example, right? The word that everybody uses, the word agape, it's made up of two words, ago, apo. Ago means I lead, apo means upwards. So the word, even though it was used by Plato in antiquity in its verb form, it becomes a noun really with the Gospels. And at the end of John's Gospel, there is an interaction between Jesus and Peter. And Jesus asks Peter, do you love me? And Peter answers, of course I love you. And this happens 3 times. But it doesn't make you suspect anything reading it in English. If you read it in Greek, Christ uses the term agape, and Peter answers with the term friendship, philia. And it happens again and again and again. And at the end, Peter says, well, why can't I be with you? And Christ tells him, because you follow me. The beloved apostle, agapetos, John, is the one who is with me. So that segment establishes John as an initiate, because even in Rumi, you see the term great beloved. It means that you have passed a certain level of initiation. And when you say John is the beloved of Christ, it's really the beloved apostle who is an initiate.
Oh my gosh, just all the codes. Sorry to
And
interrupt you, but
it
all the
just
codes.
brings a new light to the Gospels. And actually, all my search was to understand what happened at that crossroad in time. Steiner calls it the turning point in time. Because with Christianity coming in, Christ was an Essene. Jesus rather, he was trained to be an Essene. He was trained to the Essene initiation. But then Christianity comes and 200 years later says, no, there is no reincarnation. No, there is no initiation. No, everything depends on the bishops and the priests. And wipes out everything pagan across the Western world. And that's why you see today a Western world that is devoid of spirituality, and the people who seek it go to the East. Because in the East, all of that knowledge was kept at a family level. It couldn't be destroyed. Whereas in the West, we created Plato's Academy and all kinds of educational ways to come, the library in Alexandria. All of these things were easily destroyed and wiped out. And to my amazement, all I was looking for is what is initiation? How was it done in the past? And what is it today? And most of my work talks to that. But to my amazement, the strongest initiation document is the New Testament of everything I found. But it was conveniently mistranslated to hide all of that. So, for example, when you say the second coming of Christ, that's not what it says in the gospel. In the gospel, it says the second presence. And that is an etheric presence, which when you rise to it, you can be with the masters. You can be with Christ. But it's translated as, oh no, all you need to do is be good and wait, Christ will come back to save you. No.
Yeah.
And Steiner says, he predicts, Steiner lived at the turn of the previous century, and he predicted that by the end of the 20th century, the mystery in Golgotha would be repeated at the etheric level. And out of that resurrection, Christ creates an etheric stamp available to anybody who offers their life to service. So what I saw was that etheric stamp, and more people will begin to see it in the coming years. And you see how many people were born in the latter part of the 20th century who became I don't know what you would call avatars or masters or healers. They really devoted their life that way, right? So it's just a different path. It aligns to the chakras, but it's different than the chakras because it recognizes the duality in us and how much of the path has to do with balancing out that duality for the three functions of the soul: the willing, the feeling, and the thinking. So our dual chakras are the second for willing, the fourth for feeling, and the sixth for thinking.
Wow.
And the modern path of initiation is how to balance out each of these levels so you can center and rise in the totem pole we have around our spine and allow the soul to rise to spirit again.
Wow. Wow.
That's a summary of it.
That's, yeah, again, and what I've just, as you're explaining that, I don't know why this popped back into my mind, but as you're explaining that, I was thinking back to what you said about the mountains and the different chakras and the different feelings that you experience. And I'm sure that maybe we all do, but we're just not as consciously aware. I know as myself, I don't always know how to explain it, but sometimes it's just a feeling. But yeah, different places do have different feelings, and you know, being at the beach is very different to being in the city, things like that. But just thinking about what you said, I can imagine now that that has quite an effect on your life and in the choices that you make, and being really hyper conscious to it, and in that way, have you noticed that you're able to amplify things in your life? Like for example, like say when you're doing your writing or something, do you find that you it's okay like to be in your house, or do you find that if you go to certain areas and certain, I don't know, energies, that it actually supports your progression, or is that, am I thinking a bit too too far?
One thing I learned, probably the major thing I learned, was not to seek solutions outside myself, to
Wow.
go
That's powerful.
inside and seek it there.
Yeah.
And that, so I think ultimately that leads to a monastic life, right? But
Mm.
you seek it within because you have the universe inside you.
Yeah. And I think literally what I've almost given as an example in asking you that is my mind is trying to make sense and control the situation, and that's the whole beauty of what you're saying is we're almost, trying to make logic of things when maybe we don't need to know the logic of it. We just need to feel into it. So I really, really love that you've mentioned that.
I think you need to notice. Noticing is very important,
Yeah.
but don't judge. Just notice and remember what you notice, right?
Yeah.
But don't put judgment over it because judgment hides it from you.
Ah, okay.
And actually, one of the most important lessons I learned as I did the mapping of the Beatitudes to the Kabbalah is that the kingdom of heaven is within, and Christ says that. But of course, that is translated the wrong way. It's translated, the kingdom of heaven is amongst you. No, no, no.
It's within.
The Greek says it's inside you. So to reach it, you need to harness your left brain to the degree that it stops all judgment.
Wow.
Because it is that judgment that constitutes the veil that keeps us from seeing the other side.
Wow. So you've
And to
almost
me,
had the
that was the
veil
strongest
removed.
message.
Sorry.
So that's what I want to write my book about because it was like, wow. Because I always felt, yeah, we need to balance the right and left brain.
Mm.
But that's only the beginning of it. Then you need to totally harness the left brain so it stops spreading fear and doubt and suspicion and any kind of judgment.
Wow. Yeah, I can see how the left brain is quite domineering in this world right now. So this is really, really an important conversation. Even when we try, we try so hard not to. It's just something that has just been so instilled into us. And then the other thing that you've mentioned about the translation, this is very powerful. Like no judgment, because, but whether that person who translated it at the time that was the capacity they knew, but in itself, a completely different translation of how the Greeks are seeing things and how potentially most of the world are seeing, like not seeing, reading things. That's a big there's a big difference between amongst and within. That's a very, very different thing. So I think that already I love that you've noticed that and already bringing that to light and correcting that, because that's a big thing. So thank you for sharing that. So thinking about, I know you probably say it a lot more eloquently than I'm going to say. I'm probably going to say it in a very simple way. But thinking about our inner light and how you connected to your inner light, and how, like, do you have any not again to think too much and have a rule or anything, but how would you like help others, like people listening, connect more to that inner light? What would you suggest?
So the greatest way to do it for culture today would be to go to the work of David R. Hawkins, starting with a book called Power versus Force. he was a psychoanalyst in New York. He just died a few years ago. And he was a doctor and a scientist, and he began using kinesiology to diagnose people. And then he began using kinesiology in a much wider way to calibrate concepts. So calibrate words or calibrate, well, words describe things, right? So he worked to calibrate words like fear and pride and guilt and then joy and on and on and on, right? So he calibrates all of that. And I took his calibration and I mapped it to what I saw inside me. And it's a perfect fit.
Wow.
Because what I experienced was every sphere I saw inside me, if I went in it, it had a worldview about it. It had a way of dealing with the universe that differed from the next sphere. So I could bring my consciousness, and I think that's what the ancients meant by the philosopher's stone, is the ability to move your consciousness to different parts of that inner light. And depending where I went, I would solve the same problem a totally different way.
Wow.
So, for example, the lowest sphere in what I saw was what aligns to the first chakra. And there it's about motherhood, but it's also about control and safety, right? So, when you go in that sphere, everything you want to do depends on control. Then, if you move to the um, third chakra, which is around our digestive system, everything that you do depends on rational thinking and cause effect analysis, right? For me, when I had that experience of being drawn inside out, what I felt was the awakening of the fifth chakra. And you know how there is these lizards, anoles, they're called, and they have this pink bubble that they can blow and show off?
Out of
It
the
felt like that, but it was a blue bubble, right? I could bring my consciousness here and I would create this blue bubble
wow.
of light. And that awakening of the fifth chakra is very critical. And I think the myth of Adam's apple is how we swallowed the fifth chakra down to our third and moved our consciousness from this realm to the third.
Wow.
And that goes back to me telling you I suddenly began interpreting symbol, right? And now what do? We judge the Bible as being all nonsense and full of myths. No, it's full of symbol, and if we could understand it, we would be very enlightened. Anyways, most people live with that swallowed apple, right? And that is the Kabbalah presence, which shows this as a missing Sephiroth. They call it the dot, which means seer, but when you draw the Kabbalah, it's missing, it's not there. Awakening that is somehow the beginning of the journey. Now, I cannot tell you how to awaken it, right? I can just tell you if you can concentrate inside you at the different levels, you will eventually see different things. And a lot of what I talk is how the dual chakras, the second, fourth, and sixth, are where our work is, where we need to balance the yin and the yang. And if you think about Chinese philosophy, when they say yin and yang, they mean two slopes of a mountain. One has sun shining on it, the other doesn't, right? So the yang is where the sun shines and the yin is where it doesn't. Well, if you think of every chakra as a mount like that, three of our chakras got split when when we swallowed that Adam's apple, right? The second, the fourth, and the sixth got split. So what is there is on one side a yin tendency, on the other side a yang tendency, and we get tossed and turned between them.
Yeah.
Well, what we need to do is learn to harness them. The Greeks in Phaedo and Plato, you see the imagery of the charioteer who must learn to harness two horses, one ruly and one unruly, so they run together and pull the chariot properly, right?
Yeah.
So, and that is the work. The work is to harness those three chakras and return them to being a mount.
Wow.
And you can begin looking at all the imagery of mounts in literature, with Buddha, with Christ, with the Olympic gods, right? It's all a description of different chakras depending on the numbering involved.
Wow.
So it's taking symbolism not to a pictorial story, but rather to an understanding by number, basically, of what belongs where and what behaves in different modes. So when people get depressed, the word says it, depressed. They go to the basement of their essence.
Yeah.
And what do we do there in modern science? We try to destroy the basement. Instead, what we should do is tell the person to go back up, leave the basement,
Wow.
right? So we have a very, I don't know how we got to this point, but we have all these very elaborate ways of curing that don't heal.
Yeah.
So that I guess the first exercise to do is when you feel down, find out where you are and pull yourself up.
Yeah.
Not through external things, through
Yeah.
inner will.
It's almost like though, like when you were talking about the veil, or it's almost like it just thickens and thickens and thickens, and it's like once you then like, oh, why didn't I just do that? But but when you're in it, yeah, like what you said, it's just like it almost sometimes is like you can't even get out of it, and it's like something that you're almost placing upon yourself, like it's
Actually, the strongest image I ever got on that, I was told to understand ratios. So if the nominator has to do with the divine and the denominator has to do with the mortal, and if the divine is one source, right? You know your nominator is one. So what do we do with the denominator? We keep adding and adding and adding, and that makes us less and less and less, when we should make the denominator also be one so we can rise up. For me, that has been the easiest thing to remember, to ask myself, am I increasing my denominator? Wrong approach. And in this country where everything is in search of happiness, people end up increasing the denominator, unfortunately, because they're looking for happiness outside themselves instead of inside themselves.
Yeah. It's almost that runner chaser effect, isn't it? It's almost like you want it, you're running towards it, and it's just going to keep getting further away. But yeah, if you just take a moment and actually just really connect to actually what is happiness right now. Someone actually said recently of like, why can't we just say in this very moment? What is good in this very moment? Because I think it's almost like that chasing, always thinking ahead, and actually right now, you're here right now in this very moment. So I think that's really, really.
And that is entering presence, right? To be in presence means to awaken your fifth and leave all the chains of the Kabbalah that chains you to the physical world around you. And then you can be in the moment, right? Because you are your entity rather than whatever the world defines you. And that's what it means to be authentic. It means to be yourself rather than who others think you are, or you would hope they think you are. And that's entering presence and exiting the Kabbalah. And all it is moving one step up. One thing I realized is when I had in those light spheres, they each had a harmonic. And the scale I was seeing was D in the first chakra, rising all the way up to C in the seventh. And yet, most practitioners work on the scale of C. And at the beginning, I thought, am I seeing this wrong? Why are they working on a scale of C when I could definitely hear? It's not a D scale, it's a modal D, which is the ancient D scale. It means you go D to C without any sharps or flats. And then I realized the Kabbalah starts on C. And that's the major scale, right? A C major scale, which makes you what? It makes you want to defeat and become victorious and be the top banana. It's a major scale. The music, major scale music, makes you feel that way. Whereas if you look at the Dorian scale, it's a scale that asks a question. It's open-ended. It asks a question. And that's why I think the whole effort is called a quest, because you can only receive answers to questions you have posed. It's almost like when you pose a question, you create the cup of the Holy Grail in which you can host the answer. But if you don't ask the question, you can be given the answer all day long. It won't register anywhere.
That's super important what you said, because I remember once, I'm probably saying this in a very simplified way compared to how you just described it, which was incredible. I remember I had a decision of like, do I stay or do I go? And I remember I was talking to my friend, and he was like, well, intelligent questions, Shelley, bring intelligent answers. Do I stay or do I go? What does that even mean? You've left that so wide open. No wonder you're not getting an answer. And I don't know, I just thought about that as you said that. And I always remember that now. And I'm like, okay, have I really clearly gone within and I've asked very, very clearly? Because yeah, if you're going to ask in a blurred way, you're going to get a blurred answer. So thank you for highlighting that. Wow, there's so much. Just out of interest, when you say you see, is this like when you go into meditation, or is this because of the effect of what happened to you? Like the way you see like the outer world now is very different. Do you mind me asking you that?
No, not at all. Actually, I spend a very long time trying to figure what is meditation, is it necessary?
Mm.
And a lot of my path centers on understanding the word. So finally, one day, I decided, okay, what does meditation mean? Right? Meditation, like the Mediterranean Sea, which is landlocked, it's in the middle of a lot of land. Meditation means to center.
Mm.
It's an act of centering your attention, right? I know there's a lot of instruction around it, like when I was growing up, it was you have to wipe out all things, and that changes over time to other instruction. But basically, the only thing the word asks is that you center, which means that you go within.
I appreciate that so much, and that makes so much sense to me because, for example, the whole how maybe it was, you sit down and hands like this and feet like that. I wasn't centered because I was so like, my brain was so busy because for me, that wasn't my center. Dancing, oh my gosh, painting, because now I am not in the monkey mind or whatever you want to call it, it's our beautiful mind. I am so engrossed and so centered in what I'm doing and flowing that I don't even know it's coming through, but I'm getting it's almost like visuals, Whereas when then I'm trying to look out and have we finished yet? Or, is it going to come in a minute? I'm not centered. That's just me personally. For me, doing that, the traditional meaning of it. So I really, 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 really appreciate you saying that because, yeah, there was just something where I just thought, I feel like that shouldn't be what meditation is, because you even put it in and that image comes up, and I think that, it's fine, but we need to think a little bit wider sometimes, going back to actually, you're different, I'm different, the next person's different. What's it for you? And I guess that goes back to when I asked you that question earlier of the mountains and this and the energy, and it's again, your experience is probably going to be very different to mine. So, is there an answer? Probably not. Like, there's, if you know what I'm trying to say.
So my experience is not all that visual, right? It's more vibrational.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's verbal too. So if I ask a proper question and I get a proper answer, it could take years for me to get the answer, right? Don't mistake me. But it's more like receiving a message.
Mm.
And you can tell you're receiving a message from the, let's say, the cosmic soul, because it feels like a drop in a quiet pool of water, right? Your brain is like this quiet pool, and in pops a drop, and
Yeah,
then it creates all these circular waves around it. Um,
I love that.
Whereas the left brain is a yap, yap, yap. It's like, oh, look, my husband forgot to water the plants, and it's a yap,
Yeah.
yap, yap, yap. It's very different.
Mm.
And usually also if you get an insight, you feel your hair stand on end,
Yeah.
right? So
Amazing.
it's not visual. I mean, the spheres I could see, but it was inside me, right? But at the same time, even though I saw the light spheres, the other thing I saw was like rivers of energy that to me at first looked like snakes. It looked like
Wow.
this big, big snake that could circle around all of these light spheres or go through them. And I could then concentrate and move the snake the way I wanted to.
Wow.
And and that explains why the staff of Mercury has two snakes. It's a depiction of that. It also explains the snake on the tree of knowledge.
Wow.
because these are like energy rivers that look like a snake. So even if you look at the Tao, where you have the yin and yang looking like two kidneys, what separates them is the river of energy.
In you saying that, it just makes me really think of like, yeah, like almost, obviously not putting words into your mouth, but just thinking about what you said earlier of there's all these statues, there's all these clues, there's all, you know, all this symbology, whatever we want to call it. How did it get so dense? And yeah, it's just like that. It's incredible. Like it hopefully, you know, we don't have to go through, unfortunately, what you did to have this awakening and this understanding. And like, we definitely don't want to be people to be doing that, but then it's kind of like, you know, like you're seeing it very differently now, and like everything you're saying makes, like, from a, if we want to call it a soul level, it just makes complete sense, you know. But yeah, it's like, you know, we're looking at it as like admiring it, but when we really look, there's actually something there, that there's something much greater to it, and I think it's fascinating.
And key to that is not to judge, because the minute you begin to say this is a good image, this is a bad image, you've blocked yourself from understanding it. And even if you just say it's a good image, you've blocked yourself.
Wow. Just neutral.
Don't judge, just have the image talk back to you.
Yeah.
So a lot of my teaching in the link tree that I sent you,
Yeah.
a lot of that teaching is how to understand our descent to earth density as a positive thing rather than an original sin or whatever we're taught otherwise, right? You have to stop thinking in terms of good and evil. That doesn't mean good and evil doesn't exist, but you have to stop putting that layer between you and what you're looking at, because then you can no longer see it.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's yeah. Like there's saying, and then there's like really thinking about that, like what you say, the mind, straight away, the mind, you know, it's thinking about not thinking about doing it. It's like
or search the why, right? So for me, my understanding of the fall, it's really a fall into density. So if you look at early Atlantean times, it's more of a water density reality. And then there is a myth about the Greek flood and how men come to exist on earth that are born out of stones. The myth says all of that. So I interpret that to say, okay, now we came down a density level to earth density. And it took me a while to understand why we needed to do that, but my whole premise is that in order to ascend, you have to establish an upright mast. And where do you found that mast? You anchor it in your first chakra. If that chakra is of water density, you cannot have an upright mast. It will wobble. So the minute mankind comes as low as earth density, that first chakra is of earth density, and the mast you harbor there will stand fast and upright. And again, how words matter. In Greek, the word for mast is histos, which is the root for the word history. So history is the sequence of events that teach us to climb that mast.
And just for people listening that might not be as familiar with chakras, when you say that, do you mean the root do you mean the root, or Yeah, just to make
The
sure
root
that,
chakra,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I just want, yeah, perfect. So that's where I guess the like grounding comes from then.
Yeah, and that's why when you go to your root chakra, you connect to the earth because
Yeah,
it is of that density, right? It doesn't, to me, densities are more like frequencies, right? Some
yeah,
people think of them as elements. Don't think of it as elements. So, for example, when the Greeks spoke of water density, they meant anything that takes the shape of what you put it in. So sand is of water density because when you put it in a cup, it takes the shape of the cup.
wow, yeah. I can really grasp that. And even grasp what you say about the frequency, because technically when it feels dense, it's the mind again. It's the mind so loud, the visuals so loud, the reenacting so loud. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a loud environment, but say like when you feel the pressure or something, and you're trying to work something out, you're actually in the exact same location that you could have been sat in reading a book in peace, like 2 days ago. So I can really relate to that. And I guess like in that moment, it's just really important to probably just take that moment to just stop and breathe and just not, because it's almost like you're running but you're not running, and just be like, taking even just 5 minutes is really not going to make a big difference, but it will in your internal system. So I think that's amazing. I could. I'm sure that we've not even covered like half of what and what's been revealed to you. I could honestly speak to you and speak to you and speak to you, but I also want to be really respectful of your time. Um, and what I always ask is, if there's anything right now that just comes to your mind that you feel like someone listening right now would really need to hear, or some advice, what would you tell them?
So, right now, our time is very turbulent and people are getting very disturbed by that. What I want to remind everyone is that anybody who has gone on a mystic path first had to rebel and unlearn everything they were given. And we're doing this at the society level right now. And it's very unpleasant, especially when people destroy without any vision on how to recreate.
Mm.
But it's a process of unlearning. It's a process of being freed of all the do's and don'ts you were raised with
Yeah.
so that you can clean the slate and let the new knowledge come in. It's a turning point.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much. And what a pleasure. And I'm excited to continue to follow you and hear, especially from when you release your books finally. I think, yeah, there's going to be so much insight, and I'm just really happy to have had this conversation with you and connect with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Shel Marie. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
God bless.
God bless you.